Good morning, gentlemen. This is Regent Mary Kay Hughes, and Regent Bain is also on the phone with us. So,
as is
all
Regent
four of us are
Anderson.
together on the phone. And Regent Anderson.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary.
Thanks,
This is Gloria.
Good morning, Maria.
Gloria.
Sorry, Gloria. Good morning, Regent O'Neill.
Good morning, everyone. This is Chair Davies, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. And Brandy, could you do a roll call, please?
Regent Anderson. Regent Bania.
Yes, here.
Regent Beretta. Regent Davies.
Here.
Regent Garrett. Regent Hargraves. Regent Hughes.
I'm sorry, here, Brandy.
Regent O'Neill.
Present.
Regent Parker. Regent Purdue.
Yes.
Regent Tuber. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call on
Brandy,
Myron.
Regent Anderson, I'm here.
Thank you.
So we have a full quorum. I'd like to call on Myron Dosh for our safety minute this morning.
Good morning, Regents. Winter has arrived in Fairbanks, so the first reminder is to be careful, both walking and driving out there, as it is quite slippery. In case of evacuation, there are two exits. There's the one the main entrance you came in on, and there's the one over here behind you. And we would go over to the museum to be there until we receive an all clear sign. There is construction directly behind us, so that door would only be used if we really had to. So I would recommend going out the main door in the case of an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the usual reminder about yes, go ahead.
This is Mary Hughes. I did not hear the people who are present, so could Brandy let us know what regions who's on the phone, and also just our numbers, how many of the 11 are here?
All regents are present. I have
Thank
Regent Anderson, Regent Bania, Regent Hughes, and Regent O'Neill on the phone.
Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I was just about to give people the usual mic reminder that it's sensitive to sidebar conversations, so turn them off if you're not intending to talk to everybody. And then I'd also like to request if anybody has a particular conflict of interest to state today, this would be the time to do it. Not aware of any, so. Right, thank you. So then I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda.
Chairman? I move the adoption of the
Okay, thank you. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
This is Regent O'Neill, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Brandy, can we have a roll call on adopting the agenda, please?
Regent Bania.
yes.
Regent Tuber. Regent Hughes.
Yes.
Regent Garrett. Yes. Regent O'Neill.
Yes.
Regent Hargraves.
Yes.
Regent Beretta. Yes. Regent Purdue.
Yes.
Regent Anderson.
Yes.
Regent Parker. Yes. Regent Davies.
Yes.
11 in favor, none opposed.
Okay, thank you very much. So the agenda has been adopted.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Regent O'Neill.
This is Gloria. Could you just ask the regents when they speak to turn on their microphone so we can all hear, please?
Okay. So noted. Please turn your mics on when you talk. Appreciate it. All right. So the first item is our discussion with the Northwest Commission, and I believe that we have President Ramaswamy on board and Vice President Mac Powell. Is that correct? And welcome.
Good morning. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for having us. This is Sonny Ramaswamy.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Indeed.
Mac, your voice is just a little bit low, but we can hear you. Thank you. All right. So the first item then is opening the proceedings to hearing from the commission. And so I would ask if there are regents that have questions that they wish to ask of the commission.
Mr. Chair, could we hear from the commissioners
Sure. Oh,
first?
So-
and then
okay. So perhaps that would be. So President Ramaswamy, do you want to kind of walk through the highlight concern of that you expressed in your letter for us?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, Dr. Davies, Chair Davies, thank you so much, and also the regents, the other regents as well, and appreciate your inviting us to have a conversation with you. As you probably know, I'm calling from India. I'm here in Bangalore, India. My mother took ill, and so I came here to spend a few days with her, and she's on the mend, as a matter of fact, and I'm heading back home to Seattle in just a couple of days. So I should be back in Seattle on Thursday. And my colleague, Mac Powell, some of you probably know him in person. He's online as well. And really, what we want to do here today was to respond to any questions that you've got. The letter that we sent you was really, at the outset, it was a sort of a red flag. We wanted to make sure that you, the board, heard what we were hearing. And both Mac and I have received a number of emails and phone calls, and we've heard that there's a lot of concerns being expressed by the faculty, by the staff, by the students particularly, and a number of stakeholders that have expressed concerns about the process that's been unfolding. And Chair Davies, as you know, we, right from the outset, we are very supportive of what you're trying to do. Really, at the end of the day, our focus, like yours, is on the students. And that's what we're all about. That's what we're all about. And we want to make sure that anything and everything you do is going to protect the interests of your students. And when we heard that there were some concerns expressed about the transparency and the inclusivity of the involvement, and you, Chair Davies, had expressed unequivocally, and so did President Johnson, unequivocally state that you would be seeking input from everybody and then use that input to come up with a path forward. And certainly we're very supportive of that. And when we got these messages and things like that, we're a little concerned about the whole thing, and therefore incumbent on us to make sure that you were hearing what we were hearing. And so, as I've said to multiple people here the last few days since my letter that I sent to you, has been really holding, in quotes, a mirror up to you so you can see for yourself what's going on, and that there is a red flag. And we want to support you. We want to make sure that you're hearing all of these concerns we've expressed. And, again, our standards, we're very specific about the standards that are referred to in the letter that I sent you. One of, this governance issue, and the second one is that there is this inclusive approach to making decisions, and both of which we've talked about previously as well. And I've talked, both Mac and I have spoken with some of your colleagues on the board, as well as meaningful faculty and staff and students as well. And so that's all it is. I mean, really, I don't want to belabor the point. We want to make sure that you're hearing what we're hearing, and we hope that you would take that into consideration. At the end of the day, you, the board, you have the authority, and you have to make the decision. Whatever it is that you do, if you could please, let the others know what decisions you make, and there's this sort of an open and honest conversation that takes place. And at the end of the day, you're vested with responsibility as the fiduciary owners, in quotes. And really, you have to make the decisions. And it's not for us to tell you how to make the decisions, what decisions to make, etc. But that as you make these decisions, that please bring in this multiplicity of interests that you've got in the state of Alaska. So I want to stop there and see if Mac has anything more to say.
No, I think that's a great start, and happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Regent Hughes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. President Ramaswamy, thank you, and thank you for all your support during a very turbulent and troubled time. I've served on the Board of Regents since 2002, so I am the most senior. I'm not going to say I'm the oldest member of the Board of Regents, but I'm the most senior. I also serve on the Association of Governing Boards as a member of that board. I'm very appreciative of your concern about our system in particular, but also, as you know, systems throughout the United States, systems are struggling in these times. And so we are very concerned about inclusiveness. Also, of course, the two provisions that you mentioned in your letter from the accreditation agent group, those are things that are like our Bible. As you know, and we followed throughout our exigency times, and then also hopefully when Vice President Powell was here, he was able to talk to our officers and also the President with respect to our motion and our way forward, our path forward that we moved and accepted at our September meeting, and that provides for our review that is ongoing, and of course the review, our first meeting. I'm the chair of that committee, the committee to transform the university, and that first meeting is Friday. And part of our whole concept with what we put forward was that, of course, it would be transparent, public. Every group, communities are very concerned, and of course the Mayor of Anchorage spoke before us. We've had hours of testimony. You can imagine how many hundreds, probably thousands of emails. So I can assure you that each and every one of us has heard. Alaska's a small state, and most of the people, we know a lot of people, and of course those people don't hesitate to reach out and talk to us all the time, not just by email, but in the grocery store and in public settings. So we made the process open, and we'll make it, and as a matter of fact, the process provides for input from students, faculty, and staff, and then of course shared governance is included in that process. So I was hoping that this letter was, I'm sure you wanted to write a letter, but it's the type of thing that if we had been able to talk to you or Vice President Vice President Powell, it's the type of letter that we could have assured you that we are very much in concert with making the process the best for Alaskans, because this is the most traumatic time that I was born here. And the university has never, ever gone through a time like this, where we've been in such a very, very difficult budget time, and also with very much dwindling enrollment. And, you know, for those of us who care about the university, it's a time that all hands are on deck. And so I appreciate your support, the support of Vice President Powell, and I'm hopeful that as we go forward, if there are concerns, that you bring them to us in a manner that allows us to continue to do our work, which we, as you mentioned, under the Constitution and authority given to us by the Constitution, we have to provide a university. We have a fiduciary duty to provide a university for Alaska and for Alaskans. So again, I'm very, very appreciative, and as a member of the Association of Governing Boards, I'm very familiar with the crises that are going on, as you are, nationally. And so since we are probably the state of certainly one of the least populations, we're making sure everyone in the state of Alaska knows about what's happening. And I'm sure at this point, given the summer that we've had and the summer you've known about, I think even a 4-year-old might know about the University of Alaska. So I thank you, and as we go forward, I hope that we can have very constructive conversations. And I appreciate your assistance and the fact that we're kind of out in the forefront with our concerns, but those aren't concerns that aren't going to affect other states. Thank you.
Regent Hughes, if I may, please, Chair Davies, going to respond to Regent Hughes real quick, very, very short. Thank you. I was going to say amen, sister. Thank you so much for what you articulated. As Mac has said multiple times, and I have as well, and I think Chair Davies knows this, and President Johnson knows this, Vice President Layer knows this as well. We've stated this multiple times. Our role is to support you. We want for you, your institution, for the state of Alaska to thrive. And the only reason that I ended up writing the letter to you was I got concerned that maybe the voices of the people, your constituents, your students, your faculty, your staff, your citizens, was not being heard. And that's how come I wrote the letter. I promise you, Mac and I are going to do everything we can to support you. We want you to thrive. That's our intent. And one of the things that I articulated when I came on board was that my intent is not to play the big brother. My intent is not to be the one that's going to go around beating up on people, but my intent is really, from a continuous process improvement and a formative process to support you. And what you just got done saying, Ms. Hughes, is really, really important. I appreciate your stating it. And our intent is to support you. I promise you we're going to do that.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
President Ramaswamy, I so appreciate that because, as you know from dealing with other system boards, we on the Regents, we're beginning, and in September we talked, and we're just beginning our process. And the Regents, because that's not normally the circumstance, we find ourselves in a circumstance that's very exceptional and extraordinary. And so the Regents really want to understand the programs and the disciplines and how we can make the university a better university for our students and also our communities. And so one of the things that we've done is we're going to forcefully, hopefully, engage the communities, because as you know, we're in 16 communities that we have places of learning, and we are very important to all of those communities, from the smallest to the largest. And so the mayor of Anchorage has assigned his chief of staff to us, and it's like a village, because we have few people and we have few students, but also it's probably the most important thing in our lives as Regents that we're going to do. And so once we get a circumstance that we don't know what we don't know, right now because we haven't ever had to go through this type of thing. And as we learn about all the programs, and as you know, we have very healthy programs, and being able to make those better for the students. I don't know if I know that you and Dr. Lair have been communicating, but one of the things that we put forth, even during our situation where we were going to be cut over $100 million, we put together our commitment to the students, and it's a 2-page document, and it has 11 points. And that's what we started with back in July. And that has not changed. As a matter of fact, our commitment has changed to our goals. And it's in every presentation that is made. And it's so important because the students are the ones that we're all here for. And, you know, I'm a University of Alaska graduate, and I'm a University of Alaska graduate when we had one university in Fairbanks. And so I went from Anchorage to Fairbanks to school, and it was the best university for me. And I am totally passionate and love our university. And so for me, I guess maybe I'm in the right place at the right time, because our students have been well served, but I think we can do better. And I appreciate your commitment. And again, if you don't have the commitments the Regents made in July, I would make sure that Dr. Lair gets them to you, because they're so important, and they talk of what you just spoke of, the students, what makes this a better university for the students. And again, I thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have Regent Purdue.
Dr. Ramaswamy and Mac, this is Karen Purdue. Actually, I wanted to tell you, Dr. Ramaswamy, that I was in the grocery store, I think it was yesterday, and one of my high school teachers came up to me, so she was fairly elderly, and she said, "Who is this Dr. Ramaswamy, and what is he trying to tell us?" So you have, you've certainly captured our attention here in Alaska. I wanted to I wanted to see if I've heard the, I've listed 4 major points that I think I've heard from concerns from faculty and staff and board members. And I would just like to just go over what I see the 4 are that are raised in your letter and in other conversations. Process of inclusiveness and respect for various views. So more about how we're going about doing what we're doing as opposed to what we're doing, and how we retool that or clarify that in a way that is helpful to the commission and to our stakeholders. The consolidation issue, the moving to a single accreditation, I think has created a tremendous amount of stress in our system. And of course, when we were in huge economic distress, that proposal was put on the table. My impression, that has created so much paralysis and so much questioning that we have not had the processes and the time to answer. There are questions around academic planning. I believe that there have been questions raised on the way that we're structuring our expedited reviews at the statewide level, at the university level, and then whether our business office planning activities have inclusively raised all issues regarding the chancellor's authority. Well, those are 4 areas that I have heard themes around. And I wanted to just assure you that as a regent, myself in my role as an individual regent and as a member of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, that I am interested in knowing from our chancellors and from our other experts, including you, how we are following the rules regarding academic planning, business office planning, and our process of inclusiveness and respect. In other words, how do we get an A on the test? That's always what we teach our students. As it relates to the consolidation, it's going to be my approach here that we must take a deep breath on consolidation, and we must focus on the UAF reaccreditation that is coming next year. It is essential for us to have our folks focusing on doing a good job in meeting your needs in that regard. And that, so I'm just sort of talking here. I'm not trying to, I'm just sort of talking out loud, expressing my view that what we would like to focus on, I believe, is the process of inclusiveness and respect, including with the chancellors and the board and the president, academic planning to make sure that we are following both the accreditation rules and the board policy, because we have a lot of citations in board policy that allow us as a board to look statewide at collaboration. For instance, I'm reading P10 010, collaboration among units in teaching, research, creativity, and active and public service, coordinated planning to assure efficient changes in educational programs in response to shifts in needs of the state and its people. That is our statewide planning mission. When it comes to actual changes, either reductions, additions, or substantial changes to academic programs, I believe our policy reflects that those must be initiated by our campuses, by our universities. So I don't know if there's anything there for you to react to. I wanted to just give you my thoughts.
Well, thank you so much, Regent Perdue, for providing your thoughts. You know, this is Sonny, by the way. I just want to share with you, first of all, to that individual that spoke with you at the grocery store, please let her know that I grew up in a poor family in India, single-parent family. My mom had an 8th grade education, and she insisted we needed to get an education. And like you folks that serve on the board there, who are mentors to a lot of people, I've had many wonderful mentors that held my hand and walked me across. And here I am today as the president of the Northwest Commission. And so I've been very privileged, in part because of the education that I received, and in part because of people like you that took a deep interest in a poor student like me. And you've got many, many students like me at your institutions as well. So you would want to convey that message to that person that spoke with you. Really wanted to, share a couple of things with you. Number one, the clarification that you referred to, at the end of the day, is not really for us, for the Northwest Commission, as much as it is for your faculty, for your staff, for yourselves, for your chancellors. And as you know, Ms. Perdue, the 3 institutions are accredited separately and individually. And as you go forward, whatever model you want to choose, it's not for Mac nor I nor the Northwest Commission to tell you what to do, etc. All we're saying is, please, whatever it is, path that you choose, think of all the multiple different possibilities there are, but truly, truly, truly engage the chancellors, truly engage the faculty and staff, and certainly the students. Again, I cannot tell you how many students I've heard from. I'm sure you've heard from those same students as well and more, that have all, said to me and to Mac that they really want to be engaged in this process, because at the end of the day, y'all are going to be determining the future of the students that are there today, and the students that are going to come to the University of Alaska, all the 3 different universities tomorrow, whatever that avatar is that you're going to develop, please bring them all together. And I think really that's what we're asking for, is clarification, not so much to us as much as it is to the community that you're trying to pull together. And again, just a reminder, you have the responsibility and the authority to make the decisions. Whatever decisions you make, it's your call at the end of the day. And what we're going to look at are, our external panel that's going to be pulled together when you submit a substantive change proposal. If you go that route, whatever change you're going to do, you'll have to have some, a proposal put together. Our external panel is going to evaluate it. Our commissioner is going to vote on it, and that's what we're going to be tracking as well. But y'all are the experts. Y'all are the ones that are on the ground there, and y'all have the authority and the responsibility. So I'd say that's where the clarity is that's needed, is on the ground in Fairbanks, at Southeast, in Anchorage, in Juneau, in Anchorage, and in Fairbanks. And anything that you can do to bring that all together would, help all of you craft this path forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Tuber.
Thank you. Good morning. President
Good morning.
Ramaswamy, my name is Andy Tuber, and I appreciate your willingness to visit this morning. My question to you is, in your letter, you described that the institutions, and they're separate and individual, currently fail to meet the criteria that are required for accreditation. And my question, I guess, would be this, that in the event that change in behavior or process isn't instituted, would you describe that there's a period of time in which the collective university or the universities individually are at risk of losing accreditation, and what does that process look like? And can you describe what the potential time frame would be?
Okay. The short answer is no. This is not a tipping point yet, right? It's not like, the three institutions are at a situation where they're going to be losing their accreditation. The intent in my sending the letter out was really to, as I said to you previously, was to hold a mirror up and put the red flags up to remind you that, there are potential challenges that you will be facing, your institution will be facing, and you'd want to go ahead, post haste, start, creating that environment in which everybody's input's going to be solicited. There's transparency, there's inclusivity, and things like that. So the short answer is no. There's not, the accreditation per se is not in jeopardy. It's not a sort of a do or die right now, because, as you probably know, accreditation, the process itself, takes some time, and you have an opportunity to submit information to us that, yes, you're indeed paying attention to the need to be transparent, you're paying attention to the need to be inclusive, you provided the clarity and things like that. And so that's the approach that we would end up taking. I want to, defer to my colleague, Mac, as well. Mac, you want to say anything more?
No, I think that's very well said. And as Sunny mentioned, it is a process. Everything that we've shared with you is really our reflections of what we're hearing on the ground. Any action would ultimately be taken by the commission, and even before that, there would be a peer review panel, experts that are really seasoned and know institutions of your type well. So we're definitely not at the precipice, and this is really just an opportunity for us to engage in a deeper conversation, to hope you avert any future challenges, and to really assure your stakeholders that you're honoring the commitments of the standards. And as you mentioned, you have done that. You've reassured us with your comments, and I think ongoing, transparent communications and processes where constituents can see that, I think is only going to benefit the students and you and all of us engaged in this ongoing process.
Parker.
Mr. Chair?
Regent O'Neill, I have Regent Parker next.
Yes,
and
thank you.
And then I'll go to you.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Do you want to go to Gloria first? She's ready.
Okay. Regent Parker has stepped aside. Regent O'Neill.
Oh, that's fine. So my question is really around, as Mary pointed out earlier, that many of our public institutions, universities, are in a process of change. And so is the evolving shared governance model. And I'm wondering if there is an institution that you could point the regents to that have gone through this process most recently, and some of the different, clarification processes that they outlined to their various stakeholders. It would be great to have those models in front of us as regents as we move forward to ensure that we do have the inclusive decision-making process in place and that it's appropriate. So that's my question to you. And my second question is this fairly normal in this situation where we would, as a board, have direct contact with you as accreditors? I know that individual board members get involved in the process, but what is your best advice as we move forward in our interaction with you?
Yeah, Regent O'Neill, this is Sonny. I'll respond to you very quickly, and then I'll turn it over to Mac. First of all, Mac can certainly share with you the experiences that several other states have gone through here in the recent past over the last year or two or 3 or whatever, and he's actually been sharing that information with Paul Layer as well, and pointing various information and documents and connections and things like that too. Very specifically, the second question that you had, we as accreditors, we're open. Obviously, you are as the board, you're vested with the authority and the responsibility to govern the institutions that you've got, the 3 institutions, and the system itself. And so it's well within your right to engage with us directly. Obviously we accredit each individual institution, Alaska Fairbanks, Alaska Anchorage, and Alaska Southeast, individually. They're the ones that are accredited. But these are very unique times, as you articulated, and the others have as well. This is different. This is a sort of a new normal that we've got. And what we're trying to do is to work with you as the board as well as leadership to make sure that we provide you the support and the information that you need. At the end of the day, what we're interested, like you said, some of you have already stated this today as well as previously, is your interest is exactly the same as ours, the students. And so engaging with you directly is fine. And, rather than having to filter it and go through multiple layers and things like that, it's okay. Because we want to make sure that the governing body is really truly involved in helping make the right kinds of decisions. Mac?
No, I think that was a great start. And I mean, that's certainly a question that a lot of people have been asking me on the ground, which is, what are some models or examples like us and what can we learn? And clearly there's not another state like Alaska. There's not a system like Alaska. And we've had state mergers that have happened in Vermont and Maine, Massachusetts, Georgia. And I know one of you was on the board at AGB, so I'd just like to maybe highlight one. I've shared all these examples with Paul and provided him with some resources from AGB, from SHIO, and some from other accreditors that have gone through this. But Linden College is the one that AGB kind of touts as the most recent and kind of successful example. And again, it's not like Alaska. But Elaine Collins is shared a lot of times. And what I asked her that question so that I could share that information with Paul. And they've got an entire website that talks about how they use their communication platform, the number of ways in which they use public meetings and town halls to engage with a vast swath of individuals. They brought together donors, current students, former students, prospective students, staff, vendors, the governor's office, legislators, and they really tried to share in 3 themes. And for them, it was increased access, programming, and the quality of the academics that would result from their merger. So that's just one example. And again, I'm happy to share with you any offline, any additional resources. Paul has all these. AGB is a great resource on governance, and certainly, as President Ramaswamy says, we're in a new normal here. I think we're all recognizing that each state is going to be a different set of circumstances, and our role as accreditors is to bring together people in communication, to offer resources, to offer examples where we can, and then ultimately at the end of the day to step aside and say we respect the authority of the board to make these decisions, and our job again is to really to hold up the mirror, to make sure that the conversation happens in a transparent manner, and that peer institutions, peers, the commissioners can recognize that the process was inclusive, and the imprimatur, the quality assurance stamp of accreditation continues to be strong, and continues to assert the power, the authority, the respect, and the value of what you do.
Thank you. Regent Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Dr. Ramaswamy and Dr. Powell. Thank you for your guidance, your support to the university as we go through this. I know you have spent a great deal of time working, whether it's with our statewide people or talking with students and involved in faculty meetings. You guys have spent an enormous amount of time, and we very much appreciate it. And I was encouraged to hear that you said we're not at a tipping point yet. So, and I hope we don't get to a tipping point. I don't have any questions. I just want to make a couple of statements and reaffirmations. And one is that I believe it is extremely important to our students and our communities that we maintain the accreditation at the 3 institutions that we currently have. I would agree with Regent Perdue that we need to have a process for inclusiveness and respect. However, based on recent conversations I have had with all of our stakeholders, students, staff, faculty, I don't think our process is currently inclusive, and we have to improve it. And there is room for improvement, and I think we can do that. And if we don't, we've failed our constituents. Going forward, I would request that you're sharing information with Dr. Lair, but I think it's also important because the accreditation is with our campuses, that information is shared with the campuses in addition to Dr. Lair. So everybody's dealing with the same information and has that. And finally, I would hope, I noted in your letter, you say, we ask you to take immediate action and that the institutions report collectively or individually to the commission on the results in an ad hoc report. And so I would hope that our chancellors, in working with the chair, I know that they will, by October 31st, provide you with that response. And again, I'm glad we're not at a tipping point yet, and I hope we don't get to that tipping point. And thank you for your guidance and support as we move through this process.
Regent Parker, thank you so much. I appreciate your comment. Again, to your point, what we're hoping is that that you collectively, the board and the leadership at the institution, plural, the chancellors, the president, the administrators, the faculty, staff, and students, work together and create the path forward. And really, again, just to reiterate what I've stated before, and several of you have already stated it as well, is we hope for the best outcome for you collectively. That's what we're hoping for, and I know you agree with that statement as well, is that there is that best outcome. What that outcome is, at the end of the day, y'all have to make that decision. And whatever outcome you craft, you submit that in the form of ultimately in the form of a substantive change proposal to us, and we'll give you feedback when I say we, I'm talking about the external panel and our commissioners, and we as staff, Mac Powell and the rest of my staff and I would give that feedback to you. But truly, you're not at a tipping point right now, but again, we would like for you to please work collectively together. And I think that's what you stated in this paragraph.
Thank you. Regent Beretta.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Appreciate you being available to speak with the regents. And I just have a few comments that I'd like to make in regards to our situation that we've been dealing with for the last several months. This crisis of the financial situation and the stress that it's brought to our state and our students and our teachers and our administrators and staff is enormous. It's heavy, and you can see it when you look at people's faces in this room right now. And so I'm hopeful that your letter assists us in raising an awareness that we've been trying to deal with and correct. I think some of the actions that the Board of Regents have taken was attempting to deal with the pressure of this feeling of people not being included in this process. And as Regent Hughes said, we are a small state and we all are connected, and the university is critically important to our future. And it's imperative that we heal from the stress and the situation we've been through in these last several months. And so your letter was a surprise to the fact that, accreditation is so important to us, and we are attempting to deal with our financial situation in a way that is responsible and respectful, but apparently we have some work to do. And I completely believe that the group of people around this table will look hard at that and do the right thing in order for us to heal and move forward in a progressive way where we can settle down, stabilize, and be the university that everybody wants us to be. And so that's my hope, and I know that that's from what you're saying, that is your desire. And so I think we really just need to look at ourselves, as you say, look in the mirror, and then move forward as a group. And the things that we don't agree on, we agree to disagree, but we rise as one to make the university as strong as it can moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Sonny. I'll just make one quick comment.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Here, David. Yeah, very quickly. Yeah, I think you spoke very eloquently to, I'm not there in that room with you, and I can imagine the folks that are sitting around the table and the folks that have called in as well. And the deep level of concern that you've got as board members and taking your responsibilities so seriously. That's one part of it. And I cannot imagine the challenges that you're going through on the one hand. I've also heard from many of your faculty, and in fact, I've been to the Fairbanks campus in my past life as well, and then more recently last year, and I've gotten to interact with a number of your faculty, and you've got some of the most phenomenal faculty and staff and programs out there. The wonderful work that you do with the Alaska Native students, the wonderful work that you do on Arctic science and other aspects of the scientific endeavors. And in fact, just, recently my commission evaluated and voted on Southeast. And I can tell you the commissioners were full of kudos for the work that Southeast is doing and the movement that's been made in addressing the students' interests. And all of those speak to what you just got done saying, is that every individual that's involved with the Alaska system is deeply, deeply committed And I can only, and in seeing people and talking to them, the faculty and others and students particularly, there's a lot of concern. And again, going back to what we've discussed previously, you got a tough road to hoe. And what we hope is we want to support you, and we hope that y'all will come up with the best path forward for your institutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr.
I had
Chairman?
I had Regent Garrett and then Regent Hughes.
Thank you.
Regent, okay, Dr. Ramaswamy, my apologies, my mic was off. This is Regent Garrett, the most junior regent on the board, the student regent. And the students have expressed their wish for me to put their sentiments on the record today, which is that the students feel strongly that we are not thriving. The students feel very unhappy currently today and previously to this with how things have transpired. And students are expressing that they believe we are indeed at the tipping point. They are wanting me to express just how tired they are of hearing the students are so important. The students are a #1 priority because they feel like they continue to be not engaged with to the degree that is required presently. And they've stated that the academic review process that we're under has been very uninclusive of them, except to add students at the last minute. And they're disappointed, and they want it to be stated on the record that these are the cases. Also, we have phenomenal faculty and staff. Indeed, we do. And I've heard from many of them that they're seeking to leave us right now. I would suggest even 50%. It might be a high estimate, but they're applying elsewhere currently. Students also want me to express, and I'm very deeply saddened to report this, that they're losing faith in the regents. Dr. Ramaswamy, I just want to conclude my thoughts with celebrating the good health of your mother.
Thank you.
Regent Hughes.
Thank you very much, Regent Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Ramaswamy, to kind of conclude, as we all know, and you noted, and several times, many of us noted that we have a lot of work to do. And in that context, I was wondering, since I'm chair of the committee that's taking on the responsibility of assisting the universities and the president through this review, since we've had this conversation today, and I think that you and Vice President Powell have expressed what we would hope you would have expressed, support for us and a knowledge that this is a very difficult, we've been through a difficult year, as you know. And so, and it's not a typical year because I've had 17 of these years, and this is very atypical. But in that respect, would it be appropriate that the conversation we had today be the response to the commission? Your letter asked for that the institutions either report collectively or individually to the commission in an ad hoc report no later than August 31. Well, as you know, August 31 is very close to coming, and we're only beginning the process. We haven't even had our first meeting yet. It's on Friday. So and obviously we've been hearing from students. We had 6 hours of testimony almost for our last meeting, and we're heading for another. We hear people and we understand Alaskans are concerned, and we all are too. but we have a circumstance in which we don't have enough money to do what everyone would like. So somehow tough decisions need to be made, and we need to have facts in order to make those decisions, because we don't have anything right now, and that's why Dr. Lair is putting together the reports for Friday, and then the committee and Dr. Lair and the groups will continue on. And so I'm wondering if the report that you're expecting could be made a little later so that we could have something to report, because our discussions with students, faculty, all the communities, let alone shared governance, we haven't even gotten to that part. And so this is all very premature. It's like aborting everything before we even get to it. And thankfully, we're on our way. And I was wondering if that would be something that you and Vice President Powell, excuse me, I don't know why I want to get that Scottish thing in your name. Vice President Powell would would accept that there could be a later report.
Thanks so much. So I just want, as an aside, your comment about the Scottish name. Powell is actually a Welsh name. So in any case, and I think Davies is a Welsh name too, if I'm not mistaken. But that aside, a couple of
Hughes is a Welsh name.
Yes, indeed. So that aside, first of all, we're not asking for a substantive change proposal. That proposal from you, from your institution, collectively, whatever decisions that you make, the path forward that you're going to choose, you've got quite a bit of time to develop it and to put it all together and to submit it to us. At the current moment, what we need by the 31st of October is, it doesn't need to be a very, very long report. It could even be in the form of a letter, a couple of pages or whatever, length that you think is appropriate. That would come to us from the chair, from Chair Davies, from the President, Johnson, and the three chancellors. And really, it's the three chancellors that really need to become involved in this. Telling us that, okay, we heard you loud and clear, that, these are the roles and responsibilities, this is how we're organized, this is how we're deploying our appropriate, involvement of the various entities and the discussions and things like that, the students, the faculty, the staff, the administrators at the various levels, a short report. It doesn't need to be more than 5 pages and fewer than 5 pages. That really lays out. So you've already got, the interesting thing as I've looked at it is you've already got in place, really pretty well thought out, organized approach to governance and things like that. But is it actually being practiced? For example, do the chancellors know what their roles and responsibilities are? And how does this happen? And does the board work through the president on down? Is there a direct contact between the board and the chancellor? These are the kinds of things that are that have been brought up, to us, and that's what we want to know. So it's a short report, and we hope that we want to see that report done, and then the longer substantive change will, you and Ms. Hughes and your committee and the task forces and others are all, investing a lot of time and intellectual capacity on, and that will come much later. You've got plenty of time for that. Okay? So I hope that makes sense to you.
Mr. Chair, may I follow up?
Yeah, quickly, I have one more question from another region. So quick follow-up, please.
Okay, Dr. Powell, thank you. As I understand it too, throughout this time, you've been receiving reports from Dr. Lair, and so you have quite a bit of knowledge. But would it be appropriate for me to respectfully suggest that the report, since it was addressed to the Board of Regents, and typically as the Regents as an entity doesn't get involved, would it be appropriate that the chair provide the report and it can be signed by the president and the chancellor? Is that I mean, in your concern for oneness and collaboration, I think that would be a very good way in which to assure the commission that going forward we're in a collaborative spirit.
May I be recognized, please?
Mac, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to be prescriptive about the format of the report. I think the critical elements, I think, we've chatted about already, which is, talking about the process you've gone through, whether that comes from Chair Davies or whether that comes from the chancellors individually, or whether it comes from, the group as a whole, collective whole. I think that's less important to us. I think it's just critical that everybody be agreed on what the document shares, particularly since all of these institutions are separately accredited. It is, in a sense, each of the governing boards for each of those independently accredited institutions' response and the CEOs of that accredited institution, so the chancellor's response. So provided that all the chancellors are supportive, agree that it's, that can be supported by subsequent acts and teams viewing the institution, I think that's going to be critical. So again, concluding comment, less important about form, much more important about substance and just hitting the critical high points, which are about governance and roles and responsibilities and addressing those standards that have been asked for by constituents.
Okay,
Thank you.
Question from Regent Hargraves.
This is Regent Hargraves. I want to express my personal appreciation for the opportunity to hear directly from our accrediting association. I'm a strong proponent of regional accreditation, both for elementary, secondary schools, and the university. Strong proponent for that regional accreditation. I don't have the same feeling about some of the stuff I see coming in from the national accrediting groups, but with Northwest, I truly appreciate the work they've done. This letter comes at a time when I think we needed some direction. And I think the Accrediting Association expressing to us where we were coming up short will have its impact on individual regents as well as the board itself. Some of this perhaps came about because of a cut in funding, but it's interesting that this letter doesn't indicate that it's the funding reduction that's of the major concern. Rather, it's how we deal with that cut. I think that if there's a deficiency, it was in that area that we were deficient. So I appreciate having that call to our attention, and I think that we can improve every bit of this. One of the things I'm interested in is moving well past this one accreditation concept and get that into the past and then deal with a model that we have, improve it as much as possible, do the cost savings that we perhaps can work out a way to do, but move forward with full transparency, full appreciation for the different roles that different people have. Now, I've not been on this board too long, a few months now, and within any administrative organization, there's one old loser of some kind. You can bank on it. But I haven't seen that person yet. We've got some of the sharpest people in charge of this university. I think that we're fortunate. I think it's unusual to expect an organization of this size to have such fine people seeing to it that we carry out the mission that we have. So for all of these things, I'm appreciative. I'm appreciative of the regional accreditation representatives that have come and sat before us today. Again, thank you for your understanding that you brought to us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Regent Garrett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The students have a clear and strong intention to support only separately written letters written by each of our chancellors and then submitted to the chair and the president so that all letters may be submitted together to the NWCCU. We will accept nothing less. I move that the chancellors write their own letters to be submitted to the board chair and the president. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, but we have that motion stated. Read again.
I think,
I'd be happy to state it again, Regent Hargreaves.
I think we're going to have some further discussion that would be helpful to bring that motion at a later point, if you don't mind.
I will bring that motion at a later point. The students that are present in the audience today have been asked to be recognized. They wish to address the accrediting commissioners. These are the students that have asked to be recognized before the NWCCU hangs up.
This is a conversation between the board and the commission at this point. We're going to try to develop more inclusive processes as we move forward, but we're now well over our hour with the commissions.
I think these students are just requesting 1 minute, and this is the time to start our inclusivity if we haven't already. Am I not right? I see you there,
Sure
students.
Regent Anderson, I haven't had a chance to talk to him.
Regent Anderson, go ahead, please. I'm mindful that we're over our time, though. I hope that the commission can hang on the phone for a little bit longer. Hey, go ahead, Regent Anderson.
Go ahead. Thank you. Sorry for the background noise. I'm out in the middle of Oklahoma here driving, but in times of change, there's always people who are for an issue and those that can't accept the change. And unfortunately, not just in this situation, but in any time that I've sat on the assembly in Juneau or been on this board, the people that are opposed to a change are usually the ones that are most vocal. And the letter, I believe, that was sent to us from the commission basically threw gas on the fire, and it did not ignite new ideas. It ignited opposition. And to that point, I would just like to say, ask the commission, can they be more explicit in what more we could have done? I've listened to over 50 hours of public testimony, personally listened to it, and we've had hundreds of emails. I don't know how we could have opened any more doors for people to participate that wanted to participate. Many venues, and I want the commission to know that I believe that we are doing basically everything we could possibly do to open the doors for comments. And I've talked with you personally, and you've offered your support in any way we move forward. And I believe that's the direction we're going. But the letter said that we failed. And I don't think we failed. There may be better ways of doing some things, but I don't believe that we have failed to open the doors for people from both sides to speak. And unfortunately, those that support the ideas that we've been moving forward with and have asked of the president, they're not the ones that come forward. It's the ones that are generally opposed. So I just want the commission to know that I feel that we are open to change, and I don't know what else to say. It comes to a time when we really need to focus on the direction that we want to go, become the university we want. And going to be a smaller university, more focused, and that's what we're working on. So, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you meeting with us today. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I will call the students up. I really want you to keep it very, very brief, if you would, like about 1 minute.
Mr. Chair, point of order. This is an emergency meeting call for the discussion with the commission and the region.
I understand that. We're going to take about a minute for the input from the students here, and then we're going to move on.
My name is Daniel Vaziri. I'm a student here. I came from California, lived in 5 other states. So I want to read up some points that I've noticed, at least while sitting in the back over there. It's frustrating how everyone keeps mentioning students. We are students and we are not being heard. Students are not happy. Students are not comfortable with what is happening. The academic review committees have not included students' input to the extent that they should have. I've heard from multiple students throughout most of the committees, not all of them, I don't want to exaggerate, that their voices have not been heard. In my committee, I was on the athletics one, our voices have been heard. We were called on actively to speak and to voice our input. We as students cannot heal in this process. It was said we cannot heal as it is going, we cannot heal as we believe it is going, or from the letter from the NWCCU. We as students believe we are at the tipping point. I want to stress that. We are at the tipping point. We are deficient in our leadership, not in our budget. Our budget has been confirmed. There has been some side contracts or whatever you want to call it, but we are not deficient in our budget. We know the number that we have to cut. That is set right now, but we are not our leadership is not stepping up for us as students. And my last point, at least, is I noticed that sitting in the back there, the other regions were acknowledged before our student region. Our student region is our voice to this board. We have the right to have a voice on this board, and she is not being recognized. Her hand was up before many of the other regions and was not acknowledged, was not even looked at. That's it for me. Do you guys have anything to say? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to continue those sentiments. I was on one of the working groups as well, and I find it hard to believe that 3 students are supposed to be the entire voice for this entire process. I would challenge all of you to go down to MBS and pick a random student and ask them to explain this process to you. And I don't think they can. And that needs to be changed. And we are here, we're all a part of ASUAF. I'm the government relations director. We have the VP and president. We are here to help with that process, but in very few opportunities have we been given that. So I would extend that invitation, come to us, and we can work together in ways that we haven't been so far.
I want to acknowledge a couple points as well. My name is Bernard Ayoto. As Aiden was saying, I'm the president of ASUAF, the student government here at UAF. And one of the things that I observed is in response to the NWCCU's letter to the Board of Regents saying that students, faculty, and staff have been telling them certain things and expressing interest, I found it very odd that none of the regents wanted to ask any of the students, faculty, and staff representatives from statewide systems sitting right behind us, or the chancellors, how they felt about this process. I heard regents talk about how they feel the process has been inclusive, but the letter expressly stated that students, faculty, and staff don't feel comfortable with the process, and none of them were heard or asked to voice their concerns. It was just regents saying, well, the process is working. It's hard to tell a fish how the water is when they're surrounded by it. And so I encourage the board to look at this letter and not just look at what you've been doing, but look at what you've been hearing. And what you've been hearing, at least as far as I can say, is that students, faculty, and staff do not feel comfortable with the process. They do not feel comfortable with the way the board has handled this process, and they do not feel comfortable with the way that the board has reacted to this concern. I hear it all the time after any sort of public testimony. One region or multiple regions will say, thank you, we've heard your comments and we feel the same way. And then they follow up with nothing. On your September 12th meeting, you amended your motion to include multiple options. And I found it odd that after you guys made that motion, there was no follow-up to ensure that other models were looked at and other options were looked at. From what I see from statewide, it's still a push to a single unit or a single accreditation or a single office. And that can be observed by looking at the new UA website where the questions still, majority of them point towards single accreditation. And I would encourage these regions to look at the new UA website and to look at these academic review processes, look at the names, read the transcripts, listen to the recordings of these working groups and tell me that you support it and that you feel that everyone's being heard. And if you do, great. If you don't, then we can have a discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I would like to ask Mac and our Mr. Ramaswamy and Mr. Powell, do you have a few more moments that you can hang on the line?
Yeah, it's I can. It's getting to be 11:16 p.m. my time, but I can hang in there for a few more minutes. Absolutely.
I would like to invite the chancellors, if they have a question or a comment for the commission, to make it at this time.
Thank you. This is Kathy Sandine. I'm the Chancellor of University of Alaska Anchorage, and Dr. Ramaswamy and Dr. Powell, thank you for your time. My question goes specifically to our policies that outline the delineation of responsibilities and authority between the president of the system and the chancellors. Now, as both of you know, and most people in this room know, I have experience in 2 other public systems, one as a chancellor. In addition, the year I was an American Council on Education fellow, I spent that year studying the California State University system. So that's 3 public university systems. And our policy seems to have worked okay in the past and didn't raise any red flags until now. But when I go back and I look at those policies, so Chapter 0201, it's Regents Policy Part 2, Chapter 0201, University President, where it outlines the authority of the president. It appears that the responsibilities and authority of the president of the system, they just transferred from when we only had one university and one president of one university. And when I look at, again, Part 2, Chapter 202, officers of the university and the responsibilities of the chancellors have no authority except for that delegated by the president. And there is no formal document that outlines the delegation. Meanwhile, at NWCCU, as CEOs of accredited institutions, we are supposed to have authority over certain things in our institutions, and technically we do not. So I just ask you if I'm on the right track in terms of focusing on these policies and what we need to do, or what our regents need to do to delineate a little more clearly those lines and giving authority to chancellors for certain functions and operations within the individual accredited universities.
Well, thanks, Chancellor Sandy. This is Sonny. I'll give you, I'll respond, and then I'll let Mac pick up a little bit more. So the bottom line is, for us, that's what we want to know. What are the roles and responsibilities of the chancellors of 3 universities that are accredited, and then how do they relate to the president, and how do they, the chancellors and the president relate to the regents, the board, and vice versa. And so really, our intent in sending the letter was really that, delineate, please, very clearly the roles and responsibilities and who does what and why. And that way we have a clear sense. Everybody has a clear sense of the sort of the line of command, et cetera, that is in place within the system, as well as the individual universities that are accredited. Mac?
No, I think that's very well said. As someone that walked with the teams in Alaska, Anchorage, and in Juneau, we can share with you that the teams asked some of the very same questions, and each of the teams requested specific meetings with the President Johnson just to kind of talk through his understanding of what the roles and responsibilities were. So it's something that I think that teams have been interested in, and I think that the letter really is the sentiment of what we hear as the commission from the public, from students, faculty, staff, from other administrators, which is, as you go through this process, our role here is to support the standards. It's to support that clear, transparent communication so that everyone engaged in the decision-making process really understands whose role, whose authority, and all of this does extend from the board. I mean, it is a complex governance situation because you have 3 independently accredited institutions. You have a single board that's representing each of those institutions. So we understand that there's complexity there and that it is a very unique situation. That's part of the reason why we've encouraged all of you, in all of my communications to not, we're not going to have the right answer. There's not going to be an A to Regent Perdue's question, but really to reach out to AGB, to SHIO, to other models, to look to other systems that are working effectively, and then just to make it transparent and clear so that everyone engaged understands clearly, transparently, who's making decisions, why the decisions are being made, and how the lines of authority roll up to the board.
Chancellor Caulfield.
Thank you, Chancellor Rick Caulfield, University of Alaska Southeast. I don't have any additional questions for representatives from the commission. I do want to express my agreement with my colleague from University of Alaska Anchorage. I think this is a real opportunity for us as a system to revisit those policies that she referenced and to give new consideration to the relationship between the statewide office and the chancellors so that there's clarity for everybody involved. And obviously this is a huge challenge for our system. Everyone has spoken to that, and it's also an opportunity to take the time to work through those and strike the right balance. It's in the interest of the institution as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Chancellor White.
Thank you. This is Dan White, Chancellor at University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I also support my colleagues' comments. I'm an engineer, so I get straight to where the rubber meets the road, and for me, I've heard, well, this is not a tipping point letter or it's a red flags letter. It's a really big deal to get a letter as the CEO of an accredited university saying that there are concerns that you've failed. I mean, that's a big deal, especially for UAF in the position that we're in with our accreditation coming up. And I think, and maybe I read the letter as fairly vague in what specifically the issue was. I think as I talk to people, it's been interpreted as just a lack of communication. There needs to be more communication versus really clarity needed in decision making. And I think this discussion has been helpful. At least what I have heard is it is clarity needed in decision making. I am looking at I interpreted the letter to say that the university's CEOs would report collectively or together, and now through the president or through the chair. But I understand that I'm going to write that letter, and I need, for me, it's important to know what it is that we're trying to respond to. And if it's decision making, I think there's another issue that we will need to address, and that is what is the decision making authority that is needed to meet the standard 1 criteria of the commission. And maybe this is information that's already been shared with Paul. Maybe Paul is planning to share that, but I don't have the information that's been shared with Paul, so I don't know if that is something that Vice President Layer, that we're going to get at some point. But anyway, so for me, the more that can be shared from the commission or from President Ramaswamy or Dr. Powell about the specific concerns and how our response will or will not meet standard 1, which was what the concern was raised in the letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I may, Chair Davies?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Sonny. May I, sir? Yes. I want to thank Chancellor Sandine, Caulfield, and White on their comments and their questions as well, particularly Chancellor White's, Dan, if I may call you that. Really, at the end of the day, for us, is that clarity as to, what is the line of command and what are your roles and responsibilities at your level, and what are the roles and responsibilities that is vested in the president and that's the board. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the board that determines who gets to do what, et cetera. And that needs to be delineated very clearly. And that's what, we've heard from various individuals. And that's number 1, is that clarity. Number 2 is the communications piece of it, and I agree that, Regent Anderson spoke to the fact that, a lot of input has been sought. I've heard from a number of individuals, yes, that's been happening as well. But really the communication piece of it as well, that really incumbent on the board, the chancellors, and the president to be communicating at multiple different levels and back and forth. And so that the process that is being undertaken and the results of that will then be, incorporated into a substantive change proposal that ultimately comes to us to be evaluated. And so those are the 2 things. I mean, really it comes to that, the clarity and the transparency of it as well, that, that everybody has a chance to read and we've heard from the students that they seem to, the students feel like they're not part of the conversation. And so, what is it, what more can be done at the different levels? These are things that we've been, thinking of as well. So in the report that you would want to do either collectively or individually, and I encourage you to get together and do it collectively, is to demonstrably show to us what is it you're doing, what are the roles and responsibilities, what's the line of command, the clarity in regards to, does everybody know what their roles and responsibilities are? Is there clarity to it? And that's what we need to get. Mac, you want to add anything more? Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. We're well beyond our our 1 hour with the commission. So I'm going to thank the commission for joining us this morning. We appreciate your willingness to extend your time. And what I would like to do is take a quick break, and then we're going to come back in open session. And I would like to have opportunity for a quick comment from the faculty and staff representatives, and then then the board is going to resume its deliberations. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break, and thanks again to Dr. Ramaswamy and Dr. Powell. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair.
Good luck to all of you, and we look forward to supporting you. Bye-bye.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Regent O'Neill, go ahead.
This is Gloria, and I just want to let the board know that I'm going to have to leave the call at 10:30 as I chair a national commission. And as soon as we're finished with that meeting, I will be back online.
Okay, thank you. Do you have an estimate when you might be back online?
I don't know. This meeting has been scheduled for over a month and a half, and since I chair it, I have to attend. So I hope to be done in less than an hour.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
No, I'm a reporter at the Anchorage
Excuse
Daily
me,
News.
we can hear your comments online. I don't know
My
what.
name's Tegan.
Yeah, I'm Tim Brandner.
Oh, yeah.
I know your name well, but I just hadn't met you.
Yeah.
Name to the face. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Scott Gross, by the way. Yeah. Glad to meet you. Yeah, you're doing a good job with covering these.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm sure it's like with you too. There's like just a million
mics
pieces
are
to
on and being transmitted.
I could sit and write 10 stories a day.
Yeah.
Still, are you going to reach enough people to get the clarity that you're trying to get out with everybody? I think they're telling us our mics, the mics are. Hi, this is Tim. We haven't said anything embarrassing, I hope.
Morning, this is Brandy. Who's joined us online?
Brandy, it's Mary.
Thank you, Regent Hughes.
Randy, were you?
Randy, this is Vice President Lair. I'm still online as well.
Thank you, Paul.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And I'd like to offer the Staff Alliance and Faculty Alliance comment. We've had an opportunity to hear some from the students already this morning, but we're going to move into executive session here. But before we do that, if you want to provide us with a minute or two, your reactions to the conversation or your concerns about where we are right now, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. First off, I'd like to thank Chair Davies for recognizing the students that came in here today. I think that kind of represents how we feel with just in general, the shared governance principles and how students have been involved in this process of how are we going to consolidate, handle the budget cuts, single accreditation or not. It does feel like we do need to force our way into having input. I think that was a demonstration of how a lot of students feel at all three campuses. So I thank them for coming up today and voicing their opinions. I think when we get a letter saying that we're not compliant with accreditation, students jump like they're scared. Like we're very easily spooked. Like we got spooked by it. It was scary back when UAA lost their accreditation for School of Education, and now to hear that all three are non-compliant because of shared governance principles and other concerns, that's really scary. And so, yeah, it's kind of like Student Regent Cachet said, like, they're already looking for other places to go because this is not what we signed up for. That's not what we want to pay money for. We want to go to a school that's accredited. I think that's the whole time students want to go to a university that's accredited and listens to them and cares about them. That's the main point. I also appreciate Regent Tuber for asking on the NWCCU, what have we reached the tipping point? Because for us, it feels like the tipping point, and I'm glad to hear that they said it's not, but how far much are we going to go until we do reach the tipping point and we don't have accreditation? I really ask the regions to tread very carefully as they approach finding a response to the letter, preparing those reports, and how we're going to move forward with our endeavors so far. Please be really careful. We want to keep going to an accredited university. I also want to support the statement that the three students made in the sense that we are losing faith in some of our system leadership. We have very powerful chancellors who have been able to come to meetings with us and talk to us. So I do want to agree with them in the sense that we would like to see chancellors being able to address their issues on their own because they are doing a fantastic job and they have been keeping in dialogue with us. And so our faith is becoming closer to our chancellors because we are able to have a dialogue with them, and we do feel more represented with our regional true CEOs. So again, faith is dying a little bit in some of our system leadership. We want to give more power to our chancellors who have been able to hear us, and we do want to be heard, and we do want to go to an accredited university.
Thank you. I just would like to reply quickly that I believe that every single person on this board shares your concern about accreditation. And so that that letter was a concern, a big concern to us as well. And I also appreciate comments or questions and clarifying that. It's clear that our programs are strong. There's no doubt about that. But there is a concern about communication writ large, and that we are going to try to deal with that. And so I just want you to know that we share your concern, and we hear your concern as well.
So we're getting scared, and that's how we're.
Hear you.
Good morning, Maria Williams, Chair of Faculty Alliance. Thank you for hearing my words today, which reflect the sentiments of most faculty across the 3 universities. It is regrettable that I must acknowledge that we have a crisis of leadership in the statewide office, which has resulted in confusion and chaotic decision-making. I must point out that Faculty Alliance has written a number of resolutions, the most recent one from our emergency meeting a week ago today, which asked for 3 things: that we have an immediate moratorium on the expedited program reviews being conducted under academic restructuring phase 2 until the UA administration follows the NWCCU and U.S. Department of Education guidelines to ensure inclusive decision-making. 2, that a task force be formed immediately, led by the 3 chancellors, their provost, and shared governance leadership in order to get the report to the NWCCU in advance of their October 31 deadline, in addition to identifying all specific Board of Regents policies and regulations that need to be amended in order to come into compliance with NWCCU standards. 3, that commercials, media, and the new UA system website be frozen as it presents uninformed and erroneous information. It has been a tumultuous few months, and the faculty acknowledge that we have dealt with severe budget scenarios that have included up to $135 million budget cut, multiple emergency meetings, declaration of financial exigency, a new compact between the governor and Chair Davies, reversal of said financial exigency, the new UA academic structure change management working groups, which is a week-long process led by an outside consultant, a questionable survey by said consultant, and now expedited program reviews under Vice President Lair with a deadline of October 10th. So imagine you might be a faculty or professional staff or student in the UAF College of Business. You are in an academic restructuring committee with your UAA College of Business counterparts, and only one of these colleges might survive. And guess what? You have to do this in an expedited fashion over a total of 6 hours with reports due by October 10th. This is not shared governance. All of the above actions culminated in a shocking letter from the NWCCU, which states that accreditation of our universities are at risk if shared governance is not implemented. Throughout all of these initiatives, the faculty voice has been muted. In addition to the leadership of our chancellors has been compromised by unilateral decisions being made from the statewide president's office. Concern over a clear lack of shared governance are expressed in the recent Staff Alliance resolution regarding administrative consolidations, which states that the staff have been left out of the decision-making process. The UAA Faculty Senate resolution calling into question the leadership abilities of our current president, and an unprecedented letter written by 7 former chancellors demanding that the UA system reverse course and adopt shared governance strategies in decisions on restructure. The US UAF resolution supports the Faculty Alliance resolution, which I had cited earlier, and a UAS Faculty Senate resolution also echo the sentiments of our respective faculty concerns as well, and lack of inclusiveness. I apologize, I'm also nervous. The faculty acknowledge that the state of Alaska is in a budget downturn, and we are willing to restructure and revision our respective universities. There have been hundreds of faculty who have done research, crunched budget figures, served on committees, which is evidence that we are willing to do some heavy lifting. We are willing to roll up our sleeves. We are not resistant to change. We acknowledge that. However, it must be done within the context of a process in which we work directly with our chancellors and our shared governance groups. May I capture two processes that have played out these past few months? The first is an example of inclusive governance and collaboration, and the second is a counterexample. Process one. In late July, of course, we had that $135 budget cut. Faculty Alliance sent a memo to all the chancellors and provosts of the three universities asking that they include their faculty senate leadership in any planning and discussions of how they would survive the $135 million budget cut. It was almost magical. The three chancellors, their respective provosts, budget teams, faculty senate leadership, and a few staff set up Zoom meetings in advance of the July 30th Board of Regents meeting. This was a true shared governance process, all voices at the table dealing with real budget figures. Everyone had an opportunity to propose creative solutions and develop strategies to share expenses across the three universities. I saw all three of our chancellors making hard decisions in a transparent fashion and listening to their stakeholders. This was an inclusive process, one that the NWCCU cites as necessary as the UA system moves forward. These discussions led to a proposal to the Board of Regents that maintains separate accreditation with shared services and a focus on students. Process two, President Johnson proposed the new UA, a single accredited model in which we would only have one College of Engineering, one College of Business, and one College of Liberal Arts or Arts and Sciences, eliminating faculty positions and upending curriculum with no focus on how this would impact our students. We saw PowerPoint slides indicating that under the new UA, the faculty of the consolidated programs would get their pink slips this December with employment ending in 1 year, and that our administrators, our trusted chancellors, provosts, and deans would get theirs in November to have their employment end in February 2020. Anyone that has any sense of management would not support this process. While the first example under the chancellor's direction resulted in a sense of inclusion and collaboration, this current process has resulted in fear, frustration, lack of trust, and low morale. So solutions. So faculty, staff, and students have been discussing ways to move forward. However, we must correct the issues pointed out in the NWCCU letter by their October 31 deadline. In addition to lack of shared governance, the NWCCU indicated concern over Standard 2A2, which requires that in a multi-unit governance system, the division of authority and responsibility between the system and the institution is clearly delineated. But we must be equally aware of NWCCU standards 2A7 and 2A10, which require that each separately accredited institution have its own full-time CEO with true authority for running their institution and who reports directly to the board. This is a reference to the chancellors, not the system president. The chancellors need to be considered by the Board of Regents as co-equal executives, each of whom is endowed with authority to act in the interests of the entity for which they're responsible and to report directly to the Board of Regents. This change alone will address much of what the NWCCU indicated as problematic in its September 26 letter. Furthermore, the NWCCU requested in its letter that the response come from the institutions either jointly or separately, i.e. from the chancellors. The board can show compliance with the NWCCU standards by empowering the chancellors to work directly with them without the system president acting as an information filter. These actions should be authorized immediately. In conclusion, the path forward should include the following, which is based on inclusive decision-making using shared governance principles. The chancellor should be the ones to submit academic program changes and curricular proposals directly to the Board of Regents, as they are the CEOs of their respective universities and in accordance with UA policy. Statewide is not an accredited body. Establish an ad hoc committee that is led by the three chancellors with staff, faculty, and student governance members, which will create a response to the NWCC letter, identifying areas in which UA Board of Regents policies are out of compliance with NWCCU and the U.S. Department of Education. Development functions, public relations, alumni relations, and fundraising must remain within their respective universities. These should not be consolidated. Alternative restructuring must include a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis of each alternative and be carried out by committees that adhere to the principles of shared governance with adequate time to carefully consider all options. Foundational criteria for developing these plans should be student access and excellence in teaching, research, and public service. Plans originating from academic programs expressing mutual desire for restructuring should be encouraged, incentivized, and supported, because there is course sharing across the different systems. And I think that the current expedited program reviews under VP layer are muting the possibility of that happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Davies and the Board of Regents. So after the September 12th and 13th meeting, I felt like, as well as kind of the rest of staff governance, like the process was opening up. There was more options on the table. When the restructuring groups were created, we felt like having 3 representations from each of the bodies on those groups was very open as well as inclusive. I think one of the things that as a governance leader, we're trying, myself, that as well as the other governance leaders are trying to define is exactly what shared governance means. The way that the accrediting body is defining it and the way that we're having expectations is very different than the way we've operated during my time in governance. There's a lot more expectations when it comes to communication, your role, what that means. And in this organization, there's been a lot of questions of where does that come from, the current idea, particularly for staff. We've realized that there's a lot more expectations of us being directly involved in a process. In the past, we were more responsive. We would kind of be given an opportunity to comment after things were created. And we're learning that. We're going through the process. And I do feel like as a staff governance representation that the leadership, including statewide as well as the chancellors, are all figuring that out together and moving together. I think when you talk to people individually, that people recognize that how we're maybe doing it in the past doesn't work for today. Maybe we've had previous discussions on something that people aren't aware of, and we're trying to communicate as much as possible and create inclusion. Just recently, identifying concerns about policy. These are all new kind of topics that governance really hasn't thought about or processed in the past. But what I do know is that staff governance, as well as students and faculty, we have a strong desire to be directly involved in the process. And we're still figuring out how that works, what that will look like, and also making sure that our role, once we are involved in the process, that we are fully communicating that down to the people that we represent. The people that we represent are the people that are in the place of not feeling like they're communicated with. They're in the place of not feeling like they're involved. And governance has a key role in making sure that they do feel they're fully engaged and involved. And we do want to help. We want to help in the process. But we do need to point out that the volume is extremely high, particularly for staff. We're trying to do full-time jobs that we're already working on. And we're trying to serve on multiple committees and trying to get all this information, but the volume of information that's coming through that we're expected to kind of process is, for lack of better words, kind of overwhelming. And it's difficult to have a streamlined process under this time period. We also want to be very clear that we are supportive of our fellow governance groups, of faculty and students, of what they're kind of moving forward and trying to achieve. Staff continue being all over the spectrum of what they feel personally of where we should go, but we are fully in support of our students and faculty governance leaders.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Regent Hargreaves.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to express appreciation to Ms. Williams for being able to present some very complicated concepts and everything in such a clear, concise way. I think that you've hit on some things that I want to put on the table from my perspective, and that is that I think that the best governance is the governance closest to its audience or to the people. So that's a concept that just keeps coming back around to me in the deliberations right now. And there's another concept I tend to live by, and that is that competition is good. To say that one campus shouldn't compete with another campus, I think overshadows something. For example, in the field of engineering, one campus might have an audience, a group of people that want to take engineering with an emphasis in what? Pipelines and permafrost. Another one might have interest in road builders and city skyscrapers and what have you. Another campus might have an engineering program directed specifically toward fisheries, building docks, boats, what have you. A competition in that case doesn't bother me. It's not clear to me how it saves money to have one engineering department in one place. I really don't understand that because of my concept of competition is fine. It makes you hone down, it makes you budget your money. So I think that what you've had to say is something I'll be paying attention to. And Mr. Chairman, could I direct a question to our president? What is the status of one accreditation at this point? Is there any pursuit toward that at all?
Regent Hargraves, to your question, the consideration of the option of one accreditation is, along with the current 3 accreditations, is included in the expedited academic review process. Recall there are 5 questions that each of those teams is tasked with answering. Question 1 is, what could a single school of engineering, business, fill in the blank look like? 2 would be, and I might be mixing up these 2, what are the administrative savings that would result from that consolidation? What would the academic savings be? So that would be the 3rd question. And then what are the issues that arise and would need to be addressed under 3 accreditations? And then the last would be, and again, they may be mixed up here. The last question is, what are the issues that arise if we were to move to a single accreditation? So there is no drive to single accreditation. There is simply consideration of single accreditation along with 3 accreditations as we were instructed to do by the legislature in the operating budget this year.
One accreditation is still on the table.
And that is as directed by the Board of Regents at your last meeting. But of course, we are explicitly maintaining, keeping on the table 3 accreditations at the same time. That's where we currently are, Regent Hargraves.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I would like to, I appreciate all the input this morning. I would like to now move into our board discussion, the executive, and we're going to start an executive session. I'd like President Johnson to tell us who's going to be in the session.
General Counsel and myself. And later in the executive session, we'll be joined by the chancellors.
Chair Davies, excuse me, we need a motion.
Could I have a motion to move into executive session?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Second.
And I
we
read
have a
the,
restatement of the motion that's on the table.
It's in your packet right here.
Yeah. But we put it in a record.
The motion is the Board of Regents goes into executive session to discuss the matters, the immediate knowledge of which would clearly have adverse effect on the finances of the university, and also involving personnel matters that are confidential by law related to accreditation. And this motion is effective October 7th, 2019.
and I need to take a roll call vote. Regent O'Neill,
She may be offline.
Regent Purdue,
Yes.
Regent Parker. No. Regent Tuber, Regent Anderson,
Yes.
Regent Hargraves,
No.
Regent Hughes,
Yes.
Regent Banya,
Yes.
Regent Garrett. No. Regent Beretta? Regent Davies?
Yes.
6 in favor, 4 opposed.
Okay, so we'll move into executive session.
I'll need to read us in. Board of Regents goes into executive session at 10:33 a.m. Alaska time in accordance with AS 44.62.310. The session will include members of the Board of Regents, President Johnsel, General Counsel Hostina, and such other university staff members as the president may designate, and will last approximately
30 minutes.
Say about an hour and a half.
1
For
hour
both, yeah, all right.
and 30 minutes. No, we don't need Paul. We simply need the board members.
Okay, Brandy, hanging up now.
Oh, yeah, we're going to disconnect the line, Paul.
Okay.